Okay, so welcome to the usability meeting on March the 13th, 2026. Attendees are Thomas Howell, Pallavi Singh, and Simo Helston, and myself, Ralph Koller. Um, we've agreed on looking at issue number 2906568, provide users with the option to select an appropriate moderation state when reverting to a previous revision. I've previously looked at the issue and repose. I quickly demonstrate the problem. Um, and it has to be noted that the steps to reproduce added to the issue are not complete because if the content moderation module is not enabled, then the issue doesn't turn up. So it's only turning up as soon as the content moderation module is enabled. So we move over, go to content, add article. Um, this is a post v1. The very first body. Oh, and as I've said, I forgot to install the content moderation because I quickly dropped the database before the meeting. And let's go again. Article, first article. Very first words. And oh, okay, version 1 is added. Now we go my content model. Oh, I forgot. We have to go into workflow. We have to go into the editorial workflow and also enable on the content type, the article content type. Otherwise, it behaves like it did before. Okay. So delete, edit content, article, the, oops, oops. Now we keep it as draft, save it, then we go into edit, a few words with a few additions. And we switch it from draft to published, save it. Oh, check out. I, I already switched def here. Okay. And now we go into revisions, and I hope I'm still able to reproduce the problem where we go to revert. Hmm. Ah, crap. Apologies. Delete. Clear the cache again. Let's make it simple. Draft. Edit. Ah, now it's published. Now go to revisions. Go to revert. Are you sure? Ah, okay. if we go in there again, edit, as you can see, oop, what is going on? Ah, it, I think it remained basically, it kept the title, but changed the body. It looks odd. Anyway, uh, problem basically is that it that the publishing state remains unpublished instead of reverting to the draft state that basically the version 1 had. That is the issue that issue is about. And I'm switching now again. Git checkout to the other version. Clear the cache. Clear. And create a new one. Add content article. One more, version 1. Draft. Uh, edit it. Set it to published. Now when I go into revisions and I click revert, what this issue is now doing is basically it replaces the revision moderation state, the moderation state to change it to, and adds a few additional nodes down here. And you would also have the ability to set it to archived. Basically, all the available options are the moderation states a user has the permissions to. Let's set it to archived. Edit. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So, a question I have is uh, what happens in this
Yeah.
scenario when uh, the person who is reverting doesn't have rights to publish? So, you and I are both working on a website. You have full rights to all the way through publishing and archiving. I only have rights to kind of edit, so I don't have the rights to publish. I go in and I edit the article that is already published. What is the expected behavior? Is it expected that because the article is already published by you, that when I edit it, my edits go into the published version, or is the expected behavior that when I edit a published version, it creates a revision that is unpublished but leaves the previously published one in place, or does it unpublish the other article?
Good question. I don't know.
Okay. So I find the flow a little bit confusing. The fact that you could publish at the same time you made an edit seemed like you were doing two disparate actions, but I think that may be out of scope for this issue. So is there something very specific that we're asking to make a determination about for this issue? Is there an outcome they're expecting?
Oh, let's look. Okay, the proposed resolution is to modify the revision revert confirmation form to include a moderation state select list. the main objective. This will allow the user to select the desired moderation state for the new revision being created. The list of available moderation states will be filtered to only include those that the user has the permission to transition to.
Okay, so that's what I understood the goal to be. Given that that's what the goal is, does that goal make sense from a usability perspective if that's what we're being asked to consider? Meaning, is that what we would expect? That someone can edit and publish at the same time, and that someone else who does not have publish, if they were to make a change, a reversion, that they could forcibly unpublish something that someone who had the rights to publish would have done without the ability to republish. Because that's that last line. The If it's filtered to only what you can do, it may actually change something that is published and unpublish it entirely.
On second thought, I think that then it would be the fault, in air quotes, of the person setting up the content moderation workflow for the shortcoming.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it sounds like an oversight for the person who configured the content moderation workflow for the particular site for a case like you outlined. It's totally valid, but probably not sure if Drupal
Mm-hmm.
should take care of that.
I guess I can see how that is a configuration mismatch, but I'm thinking of let's pretend that you have three teams of content creators, and you have one content publisher individual who acts as sort of like a control. It would mean that anytime anyone makes any edits to something after published, it would forcibly unpublish it when they made the edit, and you'd never have the opportunity to kind of stage it.
Oh,
So I get what's happening, but I think it breaks down, it would be a breakdown for any complex workflow, which is one of the reasons why I would use this functionality if I wanted to build a site. Because I'd want to be able to have more editors than I had publishers, but it would mean that the moment something is published, it is now uneditable by anyone but the publisher. That may be what we want, but to me, it's not explicit, and that it would be easy to create this misconfiguration, and it doesn't allow for like the behavior I would have expected is it would have created a revision while leaving the published revision published, allowing the publisher to then switch
okay,
to
one
the
second,
newly generated.
slowly. One second. It, the expectation would be create, keep the published version
Published
and yeah, version published. That's an
while,
important detail. While create an air quotes copy.
yeah. It'd be a new revision. You'd be creating a newer dated revision, even if it's a reversion, that then the publisher could choose to publish that revision. So,
And so basically for the use case at hand, let's say we have version 1, 2,
mhm,
version 2 is published, version 1 is in draft mode, and now and the publishing happened by basically the editor in
mhm.
charge, and then you have basically a content designer working on a draft that is created a version 2.2, let's call it that way, which is basically that a drafted version while version 2 is still published and available. And as soon as basically that version 2.2 is signed off by the editor, then version 2 gets dropped and version 2.2 active. or published.
Correct. Yep. And the other workflow would be only the publisher would be able to revert to an earlier revision and publish it. And I would assume that only only someone with publishing rights could choose to unpublish something. I think that's a key element. It's very strange that only a publisher could publish, but anyone could unpublish.
One
Um,
second workflow. Let's go into permissions. Okay. So, but yeah, what you've described now only with only one with publishing rights able to unpublish, that all those things are able, a user is able to define via the permissions. As you can see here, you have basically the transitions and you have and those transitions are controlled by roles.
okay.
So that is covered, and that is, I would consider out of scope for this issue. The
Yep.
other detail with that draft mode alongside the published state, that probably I would also consider, not sure what Simo or Pallavi think about it. I would also consider out of scope for
Okay.
this issue.
Yep.
But if
I
it's not in place yet, definitely worth for a follow-up from my perspective.
It sounds like no matter what configuration of this flow is complex.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe the recommendation around that is this is out of scope, but a follow-up issue would be having some preset recommendations for common flows. Sort of like one of them is everyone can publish, everyone can unpublish. Other ones are you have a control group that they are the only ones who should be publishing and unpublishing, and then making certain that the module supports the flows. In any case, we should stick to the issue itself if these other things I brought up are out of scope.
I think they are out of scope because with content moderation, you're basically able to do a lot of things and it's quite flexible. But yeah, the user interface is quite challenging. Um, let's move
I mean,
back.
I guess from my perspective, it's out of scope, but I would have had both a publish and an unpublish, which would allow people to explicitly state whether or not something should be unpublished. My concern is a malicious actor. You have a newspaper, you are putting out tons of articles, somebody gets fired, they decide to go through, and even though they don't have published rights, they can unpublish all the articles.
I think that's covered in the permissions for the transitions. So
The
you can,
transitions.
uh, yeah, so you can depending on which transitions you can initiate. So it can be easily configured in a non-sensible way, but I think here the issue is about reverting to the previous state. So that's something that kind of if it's reverting content, if it doesn't allow you to revert to it to another state. So let's say I think we used this one in a kind of a peer review system, so that there is a peer review phase So, and then there is a kind of a uh, updating the content and stuff like that. So, in a way, you could think that it kind of if someone might have permissions to change uh, the status to draft or to published, but once review has taken place, it's not allowed to be moved to review, but it could be allowed to be moved to re-review or something like that. So this kind of a it can be complex.
Yeah. Vernon said too.
So looking at
Yeah.
that confirmation screen, is there any issue any one of you sees or any comments?
Based on our discussion, this is working as intended. It's a lot of text. Um, and for my eye, it's hard to pick out what the important thing to note is. Like select the moderator, but it seems right. Like everything that was described, it does what it said. Um,
Just zoomed in a bit. The description says select the moderation state that will be assigned to the content revision once it has been reverted. The state selected here may either immediately publish unpublished content or create a pending revision that may continue to be edited.
yeah. The language is right based upon what we've discussed. I would probably emphasize immediately, but I don't know if emphasis is useful. Um,
In that context, I would consider immediate sort of a filler word because you have the
okay.
revert button, and if you click revert, it should be clear that the action takes place immediately.
Okay. So then if it's a filler word, remove it.
Oh, wait a second. I thought you meant adding it, but yeah, there is here immediately. Okay, the state selected. Yeah, great. Yeah, yeah, it is a filler word.
Yeah. So you can remove it. Like there's a lot of words here. And I guess select the moderation state that will be assigned to the content version when, like, I don't know if you can make this easier to read or more concise somehow.
I'm wondering if that what the different states do. It's if it needs to be that detailed that it can uh, create a pending revision or publish unpublish, because are those something that can't be removed from the workflow? So is that always valid? I'm thinking that in some cases, workflow status changing workflow status might immediately send an email to the author or something like that. But of course, that would be especially like a individual kind of. It could be on certain sites configured that way, but it's not something general. So is that something that kind of applies to any site?
You mean the that part?
Yeah.
Yeah. The second part of the second sentence. Description apply to every site? Question mark.
Oh, the may makes this non-deterministic. Not that's the wrong term. To me, the sentence, and maybe that's why I wanted to emphasize immediately, was may makes it generates the possibility of confusion because you don't know. It's not saying one way or the other what's going to happen. Like
One,
it's explaining the drop down. It's saying it will basically do whatever you've chosen, whatever you selected. So is it helpful?
strictly speaking, it's omitting basically the detail about what the revert is basically about, meaning to revert the content to a previous revision. And that isn't mentioned here. It feels like this is only about basically, as you've said, the moderation state, not the content.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, there's one or two other problems. Um, One is basically a pet peeve of mine about the microcopy that is used. If you take a look at the H1 is required to provide the context, but here you're basically posing a question, which is not the right place in a title from my perspective, and it's way too wordy and too lengthy. Are you sure you want to revert to revision from Friday 13th, blah blah blah? It's not very helpful, and also that are you sure could go basically into the body of that state, or strictly speaking, it could be way more clear, meaning make the title about revert the node or revert the article or whatever the content type is to um, the revision from Friday 13th, blah, 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 blah. And in there, provide some more context. And 1 second, I create another detail. Um, I consider problematic if you
VoiceOver on Safari. Are you sure you want to revert to the revision from Friday, the 13th of March 2026, 1518, vertical line brush site install window? Are you sure you want to revert to the revision from Friday?
are you able to hear the announcements?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If you go in there,
Red font navigation heading level 1, 3 items, revision moderation, main. You are currently on navigation.
basically on the breadcrumb, which is odd for the main. It's not really the main content. It's also out of the scope. But if you, for example, just tap
Visited link home list 3 visited link 1 visited link published revert and set to select the moderation state that will be assigned to the content revision once it has been reverted. The state selected here may either immediately publish / unpublished content or create a pending revision that may continue to be edited. Pop-up button main. You are currently on a pop-up button to display a list of options.
as you can see here,
Visited link published revert and set to.
as you can see here, published, revert, and set to. It feels like it's a alliteration. You have published, revert, and set to select instead.
Published, revert, and set to. Description. Visited link cancel.
That is basically one huge blob. And also the current revision is if you just navigate by tab in here, also not directly available and not necessarily a screen reader user without the visual context might notice that they have to basically use the voice over cursor, for example, to
revert and set to. Published. Revision moderation state. Published. Revert and set to. Published. Revert and set to. Select the moderation state that will be assigned.
that is the problem I see here. The
revision moderation state published revert and
general context is a bit hard to grok for sighted users as well as, more importantly, for screen reader users.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you turn off, if for any reason someone turns off breadcrumbs and don't have breadcrumbs, you don't know what this page doesn't tell you
Edit
what
text
you're
insertion.
editing.
Log.
It doesn't tell you what the version was that you are reverting from. So like, I would have expected this page to have the node name or whatever the content
Yeah.
name was. I would expect it to have what it's becoming and what it was.
Yep. That I
And I
meant
don't
before.
know, I don't think I'd put those in the title either. I mean, I'd probably say something like I'd keep the title shorter to like reverting one more V1 or something like that. Like, and then in the page in the body you'd have more information at the top. And yeah, but I think I'm being pedantic.
Yep, but completely agree. That is the basic thing. The alert is missing some valuable context or necessary context. And also just making the test, if you just see that page alone without the context where you're coming from,
Mhm.
it becomes also challenging to make an informed decision what you're currently doing.
I
Actual use case could be that what I do often is that I open a bunch of links into new tabs and then go to through the tabs one by one and do the action when I'm doing multiple things when I don't have bulk actions available. So in that kind of use case, it would be if you go to get some coffee and then come back and, oh, which node was this?
Yeah.
It does have the node ID on the URL, but that's not so much information.
Yeah.
I'm going to be pedantic again. I also would probably indicate that where it says revision moderation state, I'd say current revision moderation state.
Where? Oh, here, in here.
Yeah, because it's not clear to me immediately. Like I think I could assume that's talking about what the current state is because you're reverting and setting to, but I would probably have called that revert revision moderation or current revision moderation state because that's the issue. Like looking at the title, it doesn't ever tell you what the current revision is, and it's only saying what you're reverting to. And so it's got incomplete metadata to make a decision. And I think that Simo's example is something that I've done a million times where I'll be working on a list of things and I'll open a bunch of separate tabs to work on individual. Like I do this in Jira constantly, right? Like you'll have a Jira board and you'll open 10 different Jira tickets that you're working on. And they always have all of the pertinent information in each one of those tabs, but this doesn't have all the information you need to make the right decision. Now, perhaps the argument is you should only be doing this one at a time, but I think it isn't hard to add a little more metadata to this to ensure that people have everything they need to make a good decision. And then at that point, I don't know that you need the giant sentence at the bottom. I would probably clean up the select the moderation, like try and make that a little more concise.
Just one thought based on what you've said, Thomas. Uh, if the label revision moderation state is changed to current revision moderation state, how about instead of revert and set to, use new revision moderation state there and move the revert up to the context of what basically the content is about in the section. And that way you would have clear first, you have the content, the basically that is reverted to, Then you have the old revision moderation state, and then you have the new moderation state.
I think that's the right order, because that's what you're doing. You want to say what you are and what you're going to.
Yeah.
Um,
And you set the context up front with basically what content the revert is about.
yes. And if you want a question like this, you put that just before you get to the revert button, right? So that when someone's going through the content, the last thing they read are you sure you want to revert? But to me, that like that question is more if you want, you ask that when you press the revert button rather than putting it in the title or on the page. Like that's more of a, hey, warning, did you really want to revert this? And I don't think it's necessary, but that would be the time that you would ask a question like that.
Yeah,
Not the
that's
title.
yeah. Okay. Um, so let's step through the points and just do quick votes if on every step there is a consensus or not. Um, so basically, should we recommend changing the title already in this issue, or should it be a follow-up to make it basically for core in general for those alert panels and confirmation forms?
I always overload my requests in the past. So, um, do Pallavi or Simo have opinions they'd like to share?
I think the most important thing here would be to include the information about what is the content you are reverting to from and to on the form. So that information would be the most important thing. And then I would shorten the description on the revert and set to. Or actually, I would revert and set to. I would change that label, I think.
So, for this issue, rather than changing the title, we focus on the content and labeling of the page itself. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think so. But I think the title. Mm, well, the title should be short, and then that information about which revision should be on the content. Yes.
So to summarize, basically, let's keep the title as is or move it to a follow-up, better to say.
I think
And
it could be a follow. It could be a follow-up.
yeah, and to make it consistent in core in general.
Yeah.
So Thomas and Pallavi, you agree to that point? Okay. And oops, have you written anything? No. Okay. Then let's move on to title. We have a consensus then. In regards of the next is basically we have an agreement. What is the current published content should be communicated, and what is the revision, the reverts to. version is reverted to. Should basically the content also be displayed in some way or in a truncated way, or should it be simply the title and metadata?
I, Simo.
Yeah, I think it should be the old title and the new title if the
Or
title changes in the revision.
a new title? So not the content from your perspective.
Yeah, I think it's probably too much,
Okay.
and we don't know what the Oh, did you ask about context or content?
Content.
Yeah, content, because in some cases the content might be huge.
Yeah. Yeah, that way I meant you only use a truncated variant where you only add the title and the first two lines. But yeah, as you've said,
Yeah,
so basically
but
the
then again,
old title and the new title.
mm. And then the time and date.
Time and date for each of them, and also the revision number. Is it helpful?
I think the number doesn't. I think it's not something. I don't think it's something that is useful to everyone.
Okay. And Thomas?
In the oh my gosh, in the title or in the follow-up issue for the title, that's where I would include the number of the because the title gets very long with the full date on it.
Hmm.
And I think I would make the title something more along the lines of Node 52 quote or not like Node 52 version from 15 to 7. Like something very concise, but that would be a useful context to show the versions that the version numbers are changing or revisions. And then in the page you have the dates and the states and and the titles, and that should be enough. I think the only concern I'd have is in the current projects that I work on, I end up having hundreds of revisions, and I sometimes have to try and figure out how far back to revert to. And so in that edge case, um, more information is better. But I think I agree with Simo that adding the content of the page or even a truncated amount, like truncated only works if the truncated portion is whatever's changed. So if you've got 1,000 words on a page and you're changing just the last sentence, there's not a huge amount of value add to including the first paragraph, for instance.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think not including the content makes sense. I think the title is a limited enough thing that that is a good thing to include, and that gives additional context to what you're reverting, and it averts the need in the title to include the name of the node or title of the node.
But on the other hand, to play devil's advocate, if you don't want basically the revision number in the body because
Mhm.
it's not necessary, then why put it even more prominent into the title?
Uh, because in the title it is uniquely identifying Friday the 13th, March 2026, 1518. Like it's a more concise way of saying that same thing, and it's showing what you are coming from and going to in the title, which makes sense because you're saying you're reverting this node from X to Y in the most concise way possible. Um, and so it is a correct representation of what you're doing.
Okay. So to summarize, in the title, make it a follow-up and make it consistent in core in general. And as you've suggested, for example, do something like no 25th revision from revision number 15 to 7, for example, as a foundation for discussion, and then have basically in the content section what is reverted, the old title with time and date, and the new title with time and date. And then in the next step, we would get basically to that part that is already visible and already at hand here. Um, would you agree, change it to current revision moderation state as the label and change it to new revision moderation state?
Yes.
And Simon Pallavi, your thoughts?
I think that's okay.
Okay. And should we, what should be changed in hindsight of the changes we propose? Um, is the description necessary at all, or could it be shortened? Or what would have to be changed?
To me, it's superfluous and it's extra stuff for a screen reader. Um, I ask myself, what information is that giving us that we are not including above? Um,
Basically, that both sentences reiterate what is already communicated up there. You
yes.
have basically the current node, you have the node that is reverted to the revision, then you have basically the revision state, and you have basically the new revision state also, and they have the revert button. That way, strictly speaking, it's clear. And plus the point, you don't know what different kinds of states and available options will be there, and it could be confusing if, for example, some of them won't be available.
Yeah. And this is the thing that like this would be a follow-up, and I don't care about this enough that I would make the follow-up ticket. But to put it out there, if someone really needed messaging here, I'd make that an optional helper text that people could add through the revision module because maybe they have a really complex setup and they want to communicate more documentation in line. We will never be able to accomplish that with wordsmithing ourselves on these sentences, but maybe that new feature would allow people to communicate, okay, I want to give you revision guidelines and when and how to do this. And that's to me, that's just documentation. And that would be a new feature that you would add to the revision module. And I don't think it's strongly needed. I'm just suggesting that if people wanted more, that would be how I would add it. Because you can't account for every combination of transitions and states. Because you can add new ones.
Agreed. Personally, I would drop the entire block of description here, and I would be fine with a follow-up suggesting basically optional helper text.
I can get behind that. I would love to hear what Simo and Pallavi have to say, though.
Simo and Pallavi, any final thoughts about the last question? Because we are already 2 minutes over. And
Thinking about that, I think it could be dropped altogether. But I kind of drifted to thinking that set doesn't mention moderation state in the label. So it says revert and set to. So it doesn't. When it has the option to set to published, that's it. I think the label should have the word moderation state, because moderation state can be published, or it can, or the node state can be published, or state can be value 1, which means published. So I think. Oh yeah, sorry. I kind of ended thinking that the label should have set moderation state too, so that it would be directly connected. It's not state published, but it's moderation state published. But then I would leave that description text away.
1 second. Where? Oh, there it is. Current revision moderation state. And that way?
Yeah, that way. Yeah, that works.
And 1 second. And edit. Basically that way.
Yeah, I think that's enough information when we add that title in the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'll summarize that later tonight, and you all could also add additional comments then on the issue in case I interpreted anything or forgot anything. But I guess I got most of it right now to provide some direction there. Okay, then thank you for all coming and wish you a relaxed weekend.
Thank you very much.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.